Ang Sugilanon ni San Francisco.
A story of San Francisco.
Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Good evening, everyone. I'm Carlos Zialcita, and tonight I'm here at the International Hotel, Manilatown Center in San Francisco to discuss, along with members of the band, the autonomous region, which is the house band actually at the Manilatown Center, along with the traditional ensemble they call Cultura Kapwa. And these artists are going to discuss the collaborative Filipino-American jazz suite they have been working on since the beginning of this year, and probably longer than that. It's entitled Ulalam Sugilanon, an epic, American epic, poem that speaks through verse and song about one family's American Filipino experience in San Francisco from 1904 through 1942. So, as I mentioned, it's an epic poem, so this covers periods of time and generations as the Filipino American community here in San Francisco is composed of. Many have been here for a very long time. Crafted according to the poetic structure of the Philippine Kalinga epic poem, Di Ulalim, the poem is accompanied by original jazz compositions inspired by Kalinga rhythm motifs and melodies. And what you've heard was part of the introduction. I believe it's called Binalig, and I have here with me tonight the lead vocalist, also the kulintang player, as well as other instruments in the ensemble, and that would be Caroline Kabading. Caroline, tell me more about the title, first of all. I'm intrigued by the title because it's both a Kalinga word and a Cebuano word. And immediately the juxtaposition of both those languages and cultures can only spark interest, if not curiosity.
Yes, thank you, Carlos, and thank you for having me talk about the piece. I did want to introduce very quickly, though, Binalig, that we played as our introduction. It's actually a Maguindanao piece. So we were tipping our hat a little bit to the fact that Cultura Kapwa, the traditional ensemble that was playing, also is deeply rooted in the Kulintang tradition. So moving on now to the Kalinga Ulalam Sugilanon. Sugilanon is a Cebuano word for tail. Ulalam is the Kalinga word for tail. And what this story is that even though we're using the poetic patterns of the Kalinga di Ulalam, we're actually telling a story that is primarily a Cebuano tale, a Cebuano American tale. So I felt that I had to change the title. When I was first conceiving this song, this suite, I called it Ulalam. But as my family story started to come out, and it was very much a Visayan story, I had to use, I felt the language of my ancestors.
Aha, okay. Well, that explains it. Okay, I was very curious right away. At first, I couldn't, and then when I looked at the lyrics, when I had the opportunity to look at the script, I immediately needed to know, oh wow, what language is that? It's not Tagalog, it's not Visayan, it's not Waray. And so, and then finally we got the answer, it was Kalinga. Yes. And again, the mystery even deepened. And it leads, there's so many beautiful pieces in this entire suite, which is really like a musical. It's wonderful. And it's hard to focus on just specific parts, specific performances, even interludes, as I tend to focus on many times, because I have a feeling that as we leave one scene, how you're led into the next scene is very important and should be handled carefully. And then they certainly do that tonight, and we'll focus on a couple of the interludes specifically because of that. I'd like to talk about the song that you're going to perform next, if that's okay.
Yes, and I think it was going to be My Soulmate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we will set it up with a little bit of verse, and I did want to mention that the Kalinga Ulalam has a very specific structure, which is very different from our Western structure in terms of poetry. There's 7 lines. Mm-hmm. We tend to think in terms of 8, in terms of our poetry, and there are 7 syllables on each line. So in crafting the American verses, I wanted to follow that 7 lines, and that are rhyming, appropriately, and 7 syllables on each line. As I was telling the story, the Ulalam is the epic poem that talks about the creation of the creation myth of the Kalinga people. Their amazing warrior heroes, their trials and tribulations, and their victories, and the bard, the Ma'ulalam, as she is called, usually a woman, tells that enthralling poem. She doesn't just read the poem. It's like told as a dramatic, enthralling tale that is about our history and everything that we stand for in terms of our values. So we needed to bring that wonderful drama of the bard to this piece as well, which is Marcella Pablos-Clark and her beautiful talent. Yes. So what she will be reading, prior to the song, is setting up the song, setting up the tale that the song will tell. And the song itself, as a jazz song, is actually based on a traditional song, just like how jazz, much of the classic jazz standards was based on a pop tune, and then the jazz musicians got a hold of it and turned it into jazz.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you about the title in particular, because it's also the title of a Horace Silver song.
Oh, I didn't know.
I believe it's My Soulmate. Ben Luis, we used to play that song, didn't we? Was it Soulmate or My Soulmate? It was Soulmate, right? Soulmate. Yeah, so when I saw that, and I said, wait a minute, is there going to be a reference either musically or through the lyrics or something about soulmate? And certainly you lead every preface, every verse really with My Soulmate.
Yes.
So I was right away drawn to it because of the Horace Silver connection. And there was one other thing too that really stood out, was the guitar solo in this is particularly strong because of the the combining elements of both the jazz as well as the traditional Filipino music that inspires the entire suite, actually. But I thought that the guitar solo here was really evocative of the different genres that were coming together.
Yes, and our guitar soloist, by the way, is Nito Medina.
That would be Nito
so
Medina,
we're going to get a
yes.
treat, and we're going to be able to
Yeah.
listen to him take his solo. And as we start this song, it'll start traditional, just like it's as if you're listening to the original song that a jazz, a variation was based on. The song itself in Kalinga is talking about how animals in nature are the soulmates of the Kalinga people, because it shows that what they value most in their culture is freedom. And so they talk about animals, and this is my soulmate, because despite all the trials and tribulations, he is still free, she is still free, I am still free. And so the American song, My Soulmate, is based on the content of Ayayam, and also the melody, but you'd have to sort of listen to it a little bit. But most musicians, they can sort of see that it was off of this melody. So we'll start with that too. Yeah. Wonderful. And we're going to start with the verse that sets it up with Marcela.
Long ago, there was a man from the region of Cebu, a clever and carefree man, like fine wine. His words were smooth, his guitar, a seduction. His features, handsome and proud. Never leave Cebu, he vowed. And yet, he loved adventure. A merchant seaman was he. His route was San Francisco when Maximo went to sea. Please, please, take me with you, his brother begged him one day. Please, please, let me stow away. The journey was rough, Little brother was quite weak. He died on the way over. For Maximo, all was bleak. I'll live little brother's dream, said Max in a fit of pique. Brother's story I will speak. He found other Visayans, survived Quake 1906, became an American. Fate does have its funny tricks. Survived the first pandemic, charmed as he was in his way. Cebu, now so far away.
Ayayam kuun paliki malesewap silapi sela oy ayayam kuun palilong malesewap silopong sela oy My soulmate is the turtle swimming straight despite his hurdles, because he's free even now. My soulmate, a one-eyed cat, he jumps that fence and he don't look back, because he's free even now. And they show me how to stay strong as I try to right what went wrong. And they teach me how to not ask walking straight despite his hurdles, because he's free even now. My soulmate, a one-eyed cat, he jumps that fence and he don't look back, because he's free even now. And they show me how to stay strong as I try to right what went wrong. And they teach me how to not ask why. My soulmate, a wingless bird, he woos his roost with his lovely words, because he's free even now. Because he's free even now. Because he's free even now. Ayayam kun paliki malesewap silapi.
It's just beautiful, in my opinion, and it really shows how the genres come together, and really well done, as I pointed out earlier, particularly when the guitar solo, when he has to bridge those elements, and at the same time keep it funky, keep the groove, stay in the groove, but stay true to all the traditions that are being addressed, right? I just really like the title, of course, because of just the seeking for the soulmate and that whole process, and it's just great. And the way you led it with the verse in Kalinga, as you do throughout the piece, I notice, and we'll come back to that. Shall we talk about the next song, or? Yes. I love this song. Number one, I had the honor and the privilege of working for many years with the late, great Johnny Otis, who is considered the godfather of rhythm and blues. Married to a Pinay, Afro-Filipina from West Oakland. Every time I went to his house, I had to bring lumpia, or else I couldn't come. And in the Johnny Otis cookbook, my wife's recipe for our chicken adobo is there. So he embraced the Filipino culture in a very, very big way. And this is reminiscent in some ways, just because of the title, Baby, Oh Baby. It's a rhythm and blues, a gospel, not really gospel, but certainly rhythm and blues, a theme that's repeated throughout. Either you're looking for your baby, you're happy you have a baby, or you're gonna have a baby. Whatever it is, there's always a baby in there somehow. And doo-wop in particular also uses multiple voices, as you do here, and I'm very, very happy that again, that homage to that particular genre is done in a subtle way, but at the same time, it can't be missed.
And we'd like to thank Raymond Van Val,
Yes, indeed.
For those arrangements.
Yes, indeed. Right. Again, the voices are spectacular, and it really does that genre well. And again, I'm thinking of my dear late friend Johnny Otis. There were some lyrics. Also, there was a section there where it's again, the doo-wop is also reminiscent of Joe Bataan, who is Puerto Rican by culture, but really Filipino and African American by birth. But he grew up in East Harlem, and was thought of as Puerto Rican, was in seminal Puerto Rican bands, and actually defined in many ways the Latin soul movement, which prefaced the salsa movement. And the Boogaloo movement was in between with Joe Cuba and a bunch of other people. So again, this brings in that tradition as well, because he included, partially because of his heritage perhaps, a doo-wop R&B flavor in his music as well. He was even called Subway Joe, because he was from New York, okay? some of the lyrics I thought were interesting, how you made analog and fog rhyme. I thought that was kind of curious and very 21st century, I suppose. When was analog? 20th century, maybe. And amahan and inahan, I assume is father and mother, yes?
Father and mother.
And I felt some blues in the lyrics, and I'll stop there and you can perform the song. I felt blues in the lyrics when there was a reference to bitter nights, this bitter earth, obviously, and are now long gone. Again, sounds like a blues song to me. And also it talks about days being lost in a fog. And again, many songs talk about that, okay? So that's all I have to say about the song, other than it's great. Please talk about it, let's perform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Baby Ko, I'd like to tell a little bit of the backstory, because really what the story is, it's based on a Kalinga lullaby. So it really is, it's a lullaby that is talking about how much father does for this baby and how hard mother works for this baby because we love you so much. And the connection to my family is that this is, the baby we're talking about was the first American born in 1920. That is my grandmother, Carolina. And so up until then, I like to think, and what we sort of suspect as a family is that there was a lot of sadness. Soulmate is a story of my great-grandfather, and he did lose a brother, on the trip over.
Yes.
And my great-grandmother also had loss as well. And this baby that was born, their only child, changed everything. It was here was a couple, they were together, but maybe a bit sad. And now the world was different because this baby is here. And sadness is gone. We can make big plans now. We're going to hold it down for each other. And that's really what Baby Ko is. Mom and dad have been transformed by the firstborn American. And
fantastic.
So from there, yeah.
All
and then
right.
we're going to start that off with a little bit of a verse.
All right.
Yeah. They say everything changes once a baby is newborn. Apathy, now a stranger. Loyalties forever sworn. New lives to begin again. A reason now for living. True marriage now beginning. Cherished first American who put to rest a brother. The baby that we can keep? A second chance for mother. Oh, free man strong is her meaning. Carolina is that song. Carolina all along.
Umoy ilanan latung uawi, mas chomasi chumuung uawi. Ay masuyup ka, ay masuyup ka. Umoy amalangay uwawi, lapad sikon untungu uwawi. Ay masuyup ka, ay masuyup ka. Amahan is in love again. Baby.
Like I said, it evokes unquestionably the 50s rhythm and blues period here in the United States, which influenced music throughout the world. Everybody else wanted to do R&B, doo-wop. And as always, American pop culture is led by Americans in this case. Here, the unique window into the infusion of the traditional indigenous music into this rich and vibrant, unmistakably American genre that you can't help but, shake your booty to and snap your finger. It's really priceless. And I think performed the way it was done here, the fact that it's done in San Francisco in the United States, where a lot of this music was created by some of the original artists, is really a wonderful piece and speaks truly to the mixture of these particular genres. They ended the piece, which, by the way, I don't want to leave without saying more about the way the voices were used. Again, in true rhythm and blues fashion, but the Filipino, the Pinoy and Pinay spirit is truly there, unmistakably, at the same time. And it's hard to separate the two, and I'm not so sure you're supposed to, okay? At the end of that piece, and again, I talked about interludes and how I felt interludes were often very, very important, and again, often relegated to somehow an unimportant role in the overall scheme of things. But it's like changing lanes. You not only have to be careful, you have to watch what you're doing and be careful to both your left and the right, who you're leaving behind and where you're going. That particular piece, A Baby Ko, which we just heard, leads to a narrative. And again, because this is a musical, but also spoken word, like an epic is supposed to be, there's a very powerful narrative following the Kubing interlude. Let me focus for a moment on the interlude and the benefit of the wonderful Kubing player we have here, more than one actually, and that would be Daniel Giray, a wonderful dancer as well as a Kubing player and other instruments in the Kulintang ensemble. Daniel, about the Kubing, of course, being a harmonica player, I can't help but think of the Kubing as a kind of a Filipino Jew's harp or something that goes boing, 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 right? But I know that it can also be very, very musical. And my own experience has been that Kubings can sometimes be tuned to certain keys. Yes. I've played harmonica to a Kubing that was tuned to D minor somehow. Well, I don't know if it was on purpose, because the Western scale is not present, but it certainly worked. So I had a couple of questions about that piece, the interlude. Are interludes like that just spontaneous statements based on the moment? Again, where you're leaving and where you're going, and you're in the middle, you're the interlude. Or is it something you thought about ahead of time because you had knowledge of both before and after? That's the first question. And then the second is there a body of Kubing music, traditional or otherwise, that you might be inclined to draw upon?
Yes. Well, when I play it, the interlude, basically, because it is a lullaby, I try to kind of imitate what a baby would be doing. And at the very end, it didn't come out as clear as I wanted it this time, but I actually say, I love you. So I'm saying, I love you to the baby.
It's a very vocal instrument. It mimics the human voice as well as animals, birds, and things like that.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Wonderful.
And the second question that you're talking about, it's been known that this instrument has also been an instrument as a courtship instrument, because in this society where men didn't really couldn't frequent with the females, they would send messages to the females. They would actually send romantic rhythms to them. Let them know You know,
The
for me, I
macking,
would say
I believe is the term,
meet me
yeah.
by the lake or something like that. You know, so yeah, it's a very it can be a very romantic type of instrument too, with the rhythms.
There you go. I knew it. I just felt it.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see. I think everybody may have just learned a couple of things about the kubing that maybe that will
Yeah.
shed some new light on the instrument.
Right.
Is there ever such a thing as electric kubing or
Well,
kubing
they-
played through a pedal of, like maybe, you know?
The closest, as far as electric kubing, is I'll have a head mic on.
There
know.
you go.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
I
But
wasn't
I was
crazy.
actually I was
Right?
playing through when Marcelo was holding the mic or so.
All
I was
right.
playing through that, so
Okay.
amplifying the sound.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but they have different regions have their own kubings. The particular one I'm using is from Mindanao.
Uh-huh.
And Maranao, actually, it's a Maranao kubing. It's a little bit slightly longer than
Yes,
the other
'cause,
ones.
different parts of the Philippines have different types
Yes.
of kubings,
Right,
correct?
right. Yeah, they have shorter ones for like the tabolis that they play or so, but they all have some really amazing rhythms that they come out. You know, because some are really aggressive, some are really melodic or so. You know, so
And,
and then
the
the
pitch
female
could be different then.
I'm sorry?
The pitch.
Yes, absolutely. They have different. I have several that are different pitches or so, just like
There you
your
go.
harmonicas that
There
you
you
have different
go.
pitches.
That's what I was saying all along.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Right.
Were you thinking about the song, not really a song, but a narration following this interlude and how you may be setting it up
Well,
consciously or
when she
otherwise?
sings, this is one of my favorite songs in the whole show because it just touches me.
It's
But
so beautiful, yeah.
yeah, when I listen to it, I love the song. But it's when I play, it's a contrast. It's basically a contrast, and I'm also connecting with our cultural roots. You know, when I
Yeah.
play this or so. So that's what my take of it is on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if I can, I'd like to ask the narrator, that would be Marcella, a question about, because, I mean, you opened this next piece, Marcella, with, and then there was Fernando, okay? Whoa. Okay, so you've already walked into the room with a whole lot to say, okay? So, and then there was Fernando, very soon to be called Fred, our happy trickster spirit. Now, I know that maybe you didn't grow up in San Francisco. Did you grow up in San Francisco?
I grew up in Oakland.
Oh, Oakland, okay. But so you knew about Kearny Street or the analogous Chinatown / Manilatown also in Oakland.
Right.
So were you seeing visions of Manilatown as you were narrating these 5 verses or 4 verses? 'Cause-
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the things that I
Yeah.
was talking to Caroline about. A lot of imagery
Yeah.
came up with each of the poems.
Well, yeah, there's references to different parts of Kearny Streets were islands, depending on what dialect you
Right.
spoke. And so you make immediately a reference to a San Juan boy.
Right.
Right? And then I really like the fact that you referenced the work ethic of the Filipinos that were the first immigrants. That they came here and worked their butts off and to
Right.
send money back home and make it look like they were doing good. Take a nice picture in a Macintosh suit, stand next to a nice car, you know, hey, I'm doing fine, honey, you know. I'm sending you more money as soon as I can. And that's from the heart. I mean, and I see that you spoke about the picking strawberries, how local too made people smart, and that led to an upward mobility of people acquiring more skills. And you talk about counselors, teachers, and artists eventually coming out of the community that was spawned by these very, very hardworking people
Yeah.
in the very beginning that just got here and they just had to take whatever jobs were available.
Right.
And so please talk about what you're thinking as you just
Well, this
just
brings to
laid out
mind-
this beautiful piece.
This brings to mind my own father.
Ah, there
Same
you go.
thing. He came over. He's Ilocano, so
There you
the
go.
same work ethic.
Yeah. Do you know what block of Kearny Street that was?
No,
Where the
no. Actually,
Ilocanos were.
he was yeah.
Okay.
He went up and down California. He went to Alaska as well.
Okay.
And he cooked as
Ah,
well. He
okay.
didn't become part of the union. So this is like, a really cool sort of thing with Caroline's grandfather, right?
Yes.
Fernando,
Wow.
So that whole thing and being in Ilocano and then having the separations of the dialects, the people from the different areas.
Yes.
Because when you got together with your family, I don't know if it was the same here over here, but we got together with people from Lonian or Pangasinan.
Oh, it was a big deal.
That was a whole deal, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's separate.
They would usually have social clubs, actually, based on
Absolutely.
where you were. I went to Samar dances when I was young. That's how I met my high school girlfriend, stuff like that. Her family came from Samar, and I had to go because my grandfather was in Samar. And so that's how you do. There was a Bohol Circle in Alameda. There was basically the Filipino club of sorts on California Street here in San Francisco that would held a variety of dances that sponsored by different clubs based on the region.
Right.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So yeah, this really does bring to mind that, and to have the two come together later on.
Right.
In the suite.
Well, you have more than one opportunity throughout the play to have a strong narrative segment that's not only specifically spells out the narrative, but ties it into the music. We get a better and clearer picture of the main characters, the Julias and the Freds and the Carolines, and they become alive through the music and through the dialogue. And thank you.
For
It was
me,
wonderful.
It was like reading it and getting more involved in understanding the character.
Wonderful.
But thank you.
I don't know if you'll get a chance to perform that today. I think you should, but if you can.
Would it be okay if we sort of like, I put you on the spot and we do fits just fine? Would that be okay with each of our instruments taking a solo? Okay, thank you. So
Yeah,
would you like to
'cause I think it's an important part of the
and
play.
maybe start up with the verse. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll do get ready for fits just fine. We're gonna do the verse first and then the song. And then,
Okay, fantastic.
And we'll sit up just a little bit.
Okie dokie.
Hey, would you like to set us up with a little bit of a kubing interlude? And then we'll break into verse.
You want it in the stand? You want it in the stand? Let's put it in the stand.
Baby call.
Okay.
And we're going to the next song. And just feel that song.
Take the time. And then there was Fernando, very soon to be called Fred, our happy trickster spirit who would continue our thread. Baby of his family, smiling, dimpled San Juan boy, life to him was but a toy. No land left to inherit. Manang's apple of her eye, she gave him one-way passage for an American life. Perhaps he'll find his fortune. Off he went with his cousins to Kearny Street that summoned. Easy going, quick to laugh, though hard-working like his tribe. A happy, scrappy nature that Ilocos looks belied. Could not pick strawberries, so cooking he made into an art, and local too made him smart. Later, he would empower generations of his kin, counselors, teachers, artists, hard-working spirit within. Storytellers all start here. But now, just a teenage boy, soon to find his heart's true joy.
Waksikati wamsakon ti waksika, ay nabagay lulampay, luchika man titiway, siway, faway. with no land to mourn. Oh, yeah, it sounds just fine. This young man will make his own life. Can't say Fernando, well, just call me Fred. Lost that name, but no need to dread. Oh, yeah, it sounds just fine. This young man will make his own life. Raymond Babo on piano. Ben Luis on bass. Nicho Medina on guitar. Can't say Fernando, well, just call me Fred. Lost that name, but no need to dread. Oh, yeah, it sounds just fine. This young man will make his own life. Tried to pick fruit, but I mistook. I'll start good trouble as a union cook. Oh, yeah, that fits just fine. This young man will make his own life. Oh, yeah, that sounds just fine. This young man will make his own life.
As you can see, that felt very much like a nightclub and music that we're sort of familiar with, you know. The very, very nice electric bass solo there by Maestro Ben Luis stood out, as well as the piano, and the instrumentation was just great. But more importantly, there was a message there, a sort of a freedom that was expressed, a comfort in the music that was familiar and at the same time liberating.
I did want to have a song that was talking about the young men of the Manong generation. I think that even here at the International Hotel, we oftentimes think of the Manongs as they were elders, but when they first came here in the 1930s, they were young men, they were in their prime, they were looking for fun and adventure, and that was my grandfather. And you know, my grandfather, Fernando, who they couldn't pronounce his name, so he used to just call me Fred, you know, Fred Ubungan. This is a story of him and his cousins that came to Kearny Street, and I do know which Kearny Street 218 Kearny Street was where they lived in the SRO. This was where they lived when they came to Manilatown. So yeah, they were young men too, and we have to remember that.
Yeah, and since you brought it up, it's good to remember that the first Filipino village in San Francisco, Kearny Street, or sometimes referred to as just Manilatown, was 10 blocks long at its height or at its peak, and not the one block at the very end that we often think about when it was the last hotel after 30 other hotels had been torn down. So this is a village that has been very, very resilient, but the reality was time had moved on, and it was time for Manilatown to move on. And now you see Manilatowns all over the United States representing that same village, that same adventuresome, that pioneering spirit of those first Manons, those first immigrants that came here. The next piece that I want to talk about actually continues in some ways towards the end. And again, it brings back some powerful narratives by Marcella about your family, or not really just this particular family, but what it represents, because it's symbolic of Filipino-American families, Filipino-American migration, American society, both its blessings as well as its ills, the challenges that they had to face. And so the two songs I want to focus on now, because one goes into the other, is What I Have, which features the trading of fours, which is a very gospel, African-American rhythm and blues, African really, tradition that you also find in other indigenous cultures. So it isn't just that particular one, but here in America, where this particular group of indigenous people were brought here and their music survived despite everything. One of the things that survived was this tradition called the trading of fours. And it's a very powerful, and again, the collective and spontaneous improvisation that is the hallmark of much of indigenous music is also very present here. Hand clapping that you'll see in the Black Gospel Church as well as the White Gospel Church, but certainly representative of joyous celebration, worship in many cases. And again, we have the wonderful presence of a nice bass voice in this particular number. So, and this leads into Tachook, which is the Babandil performance with Daniel, Jabril, Patrick, and Manny. And so I don't know if you want to go into that.
Yes, I'll be happy to
Maybe
set
you
it up.
want to do that.
Yeah, this is again a continuation of the story of the young men of Kearny Street. So Sangi Lilid, which is what I have is based on. What goes on in the Kalinga culture is that oftentimes community singing will sing the same thing over and over again, almost like a mantra, that when a community is singing powerful words over and over, and there tends to be like a swaying too, where they're like one instrument of people. And interestingly enough, they tend to lock their arms, almost like how the International Hotel locked arms when we were protecting the International Hotel from the eviction. But the Kalinga people will do that. They'll link in almost like one person, and they will say the same verse over and over again to feel the power of that. Sangi Lilid is talking about I am you and you are me. You are me and I am you. Yes. And it's basically saying very clearly that we are here for each other as a community. I found that very inspirational, again, for the young Manongs, because they were young men on their own, living together, sometimes several of them in the same SRO, just making do, whatever I have. If I have some food, you're eating that food too. If I know about a job, you're going to get a job too. So it's Sangi Lilid, which is about I'm here for you, you're here for me. It spoke again of those young men, so that the translation that I have is what I have. Everything I have is what I'm going to give you, and what I'm going to give you is everything I have. And when I hear the stories of my grandfather and my uncles who were his cronies, they always talk about their young lives was about all they had was each other, and they gave everything they had to each other, and they knew that they could count on them, that whatever they had, you would come to me. Now, what else goes on in this song is the trading fours, because that's also something that happens, is that the community will sing the same basic song, but someone will jump out and riff for a bit. Right? So this is an example of how even in our own Philippine culture, you have community unity, but also unique individual expression. So that is what we're doing here in this song. And then after that, we are going to do the Tachook, which is the song in which the gangsa, the Kalinga gangsa, are being played by men, and they are, again, representing the young men that are playing together as a unit with movement, and again, just sort of like sealing in that they were vibrant, they were strong, they had each other. So that was, I really wanted to underline that in this section of the piece. So it starts off, as all Kalinga community singing does start off, is a cappella.
Yes.
It tends to not have like music accompaniment in the beginning. So we'll start there, and I will actually, I think we need the verse to set this up. Marcella, if you don't mind, the cousins of La Union. Yeah. And then we'll go into the songs.
215 or 218? 218. 215. 215. Okay. I was going to say, oh, we got this wrong. Okay. The cousins of La Union. 215 Kearny Street found Fernando, George, Mateo. A lifetime would find them bound together in SROs, sharing their food, cash, and clothes, their victories and their woes. Ubungan Fontanilla, finding trouble, good and bad, the chefs of San Francisco, the best their union had. Expanding band of brothers, what they had, they gave to kin, a word defined from within.
Sangililid, I sangililid, 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 I sangililid, sangililid, sangililid. What I have is what I can give. 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 What I have is what I can give.
What I have is what I can give. What I have is what I can give. What I have is what I can give. What I have is what I can give.
What I have is what I can give. What I have is what I can give. What I have is what I can give. What I have is what I can give. What I have, what I have, what I have is what I can give. What I have, what I have, what I have is what I can give. 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 What I have is what I can give.
again, and as I've pointed this out, what's really important in this piece, in this musical, or this is the interlude. How that would follow the trading of fours and this heavily rhythmic, but in another way, and another culture almost in some ways, and how the two of them come together, and as we'll soon see, then leads into another powerful narrative about the story unfolding through the generations, the epic story of struggle and survival and pride. People were proud that they were surviving, that they were learning skills, that families were staying together, and the community stayed strong despite everything. And that particular piece there with the babandil, I thought was good in that it reminds you of where you come from. And perhaps the piece before that would tell us how far we can go. And we certainly dove very, very deep into just culture in general, almost nothing specific, just something very, very rich with the rich bass voice of Raymond Kalika Bambao, the combination of voices, the urgency in the chanting and the call and response. So that leads into another narrative. And again, I'm only focusing on the title of the interlude, which is Tachook. But Marcella comes back. And if we could for a moment, I was really taken by this piece here, Marcella, because you talk about the Golden Gate Bridge. And it starts to become the postcard that we often reference to as the Philippine-American experience, or San Francisco, what we refer to as home sometimes. But you also talk about old traditions and what you're seeing. And I understand that you're the narrator. It's not necessarily you telling your story, but you're the storyteller. And I want to know, as you recite these verses, what that conjures up in you.
This particularly has imagery for me because she talks about her grandmother representing the Philippines as the opening of the Golden Gate.
Right.
So I see the Golden Gate. I see like the fog coming in and her being on her throne or whatever it is, her what? The float and the throne that she's standing there. So I was telling her, oh my gosh, I can see this on film. I can see that coming through and her representing that. So, yeah. It's a beautiful.
Yeah, I felt it because, again, it was following two distinctly different pieces of music, right? But yet it stood on its own. The story was there, and it was clearly a very important part of this sequence. And I like the part that you talk about floating through the Golden Gate, bridging home, sealing our fate. Because it talks about the future and the visions of the future and the strength and the resilience that's implied there. It's wonderful,
Yeah, I love this song.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And out of this, if I understand it correctly, out of Tachook is the brilliant introduction to Dahil Sa'yo, or Dahil Sa'yo serving as an introduction, again, the interlude. And I focus on it because it's sort of what held it together, although maybe not on purpose. But it certainly were signposts on this journey that stood out for me. And I thought, spoke a lot about the personalities in the group, the individual contributions they made, each of which was significant. But the group project and the final product was so strong that the individual artistry was diminished in the sense of presence. It wasn't so much one artist anymore. It was just a voice representing a community, representing a family of generations and the struggle of that particular community. So if we could hear a little bit of Dahil Sa'yo, just because any Filipino event has to have it, as we all know, And of course, Nito Medina here is a very, very unique musician in that he represents generations of musicians also that he was honored and privileged to play with at the Tonga Room at the Fairmont in San Francisco, where he played and met seminal Filipino-American artists like Rudy Teño and his sister Jo Canyon. But also following them was a Bay Area native who has deep roots in Manilatown. That would be Lily Alunan, who also performed in the Tonga Room. And then following them, Nito played with Henry Concepcion, I believe, and in his group. So again, Filipino musicians being part of this community, and he was privileged to be a participant in apparently generations of music. And you'll see that and that particular gift that he has in this particular performance by Nito Medina. Okay?
We will start with the interlude, we got Del Sayo, and we'll move into the verse after the Del Sayo with Marcela.
Legend says it was a song that started their adventure. The place was Club Fugazi, Visayan get-together. The Hilsayo, so they said. She sang from across the room. He was smitten and love bloomed. Visayans, Ilocanos, oh, this was not her parents' plan. Kearny Street was divided. Each dialect had its land. But Dimples charmed aloofness. And Fred made Caroline laugh. Lady chose her second half. Julia would chase Fred out with a butcher knife in hand whenever he came calling for a wedding to be planned. Angry parents chased them down when the young couple eloped, and annulment dashed their hopes. But it's a new country now, and at 18, you are free to marry who you would like. They wed again, legally. There was a celebration, but Julia was livid. Except Fred, not permitted.
All right. See, a good, strong story like this depends on a strong storyteller, and often it really makes the difference. And in here, again, we're talking about not just individual experiences, but a collective experience. Many of us that immigrated here to the United States or were born here know about family history, family traditions, the many generations and the many struggles that each generation faced. So this story resonates for all of us, really, in different ways, but significant nonetheless for each and every one of us, because it means something, because it's who we are, and in some cases, who we eventually become. The last two musical pieces I want to focus on is one interlude preceding a short narrative to end the piece. And so that would be the kubing, once again, ending with the 2 or 3 verses before the birth of the cool. So if I could speak to both of those things just briefly, and then Marcela could come in again and do the closing narrative. And Daniel also, right? So there's going to be, once again, the presence of the kubing, as well as the babendil. And again, how it leads into the following sequence. And in my opinion, the very end, and I'll talk to Daniel a little bit more about this at the end, or maybe now so that you can just play the piece. What I got in the end, Daniel, when you played Cooling Tang on the birth of the cool, was that you had incorporated the Maguindanao tradition to the point where the Daniel that we all know also was coming out. That I was feeling your dancing, and I felt Oakland funk, I felt Tower of Power, I felt all this other music that was implied, not just with what you played, but how you played it. The movement in your body was Oakland, I'm sorry. You know, it wasn't Mindanao, it wasn't Maguindanao, it wasn't Kalinga, it wasn't any of that, but it was certainly and unmistakably from that. Could you talk about that a little bit? Because I know you're a dancer.
Well, it is my, when we learned this piece, this is one of my favorite pieces.
Yeah.
Sinulu Kangodang is a piece, a very aggressive piece. And Cooling Tang primarily was played by females.
Yes,
When they played it, it was very melodic. It was
the gamelan, I believe,
very,
also.
very melodic. But when the men got into it, which was a later part of the stage, their rhythms were really aggressive. It was like, they were just like, they just was so strong, as far as the rhythms were concerned. And so when I heard our teacher Danugan Caledonian play it, I said, I never asked him. He used to stay up here in San Francisco in his lone apartment overlooking San Francisco, and we just cooked and stuff like that. I never asked him, but I think he felt I wanted to play it. He one day just came about to me and said, would you like to play, learn how to play Sinulu Kangodang? And I looked at him, I said, sure,
Yeah.
And so we took it at, we took it in stages or something. I always wanted to be a musician, but this is my way, because when I was younger, I wanted to play the saxophone. My mom couldn't afford it.
Me too.
And so I never got to go with my friends and run with them. They all went in bands and stuff like that, where I just danced, So, that was my way of expressing myself. So later on in my life, I learned Cooling Tang, which is music. And so
There you go.
it's ironic, because a lot of my friends that were playing back then aren't playing anymore, and yet I'm still playing now. I'm still playing as a musician and dancing. So, but this song, I'm inspired really by these superb musicians back here, these jazz musicians.
Well, yeah, it shines on this
I feel
piece.
I feel that riff behind me, and I'm saying, "Oh shoot, this is it!"
This piece is the icing on the cake or whatever. The cherry on top. It just really is a standout piece. The entire band really, really shines, both individually as well as collectively.
Yeah.
But the individual performance on the Cooling Tang and the individuality that I just spoke about, that just, really shine through. Yeah. And probably, as you just mentioned, inspired by what was behind you, pushing you along. To reach these heights that we're talking about. It was really inspiring, and I can't wait till you guys play it again.
Well, and also I want to point out is that when we play this music, Danny was always stoic about it. You're not supposed to tap your feet. You're supposed to keep still.
You ain't supposed to shake your butt, right?
So, but I couldn't help it. I'm like grooving a little bit,
Hey,
Yeah. So
right.
It's something that I think, because we are a combination, we're fusing with the jazz and all that. We have that freedom, and then
it's in the blood.
Danny, maybe you're looking over and say, I don't know about that.
I know.
So, but I think with him and his mentorship and stuff like that, many of us have. Have just taken that music in.
Well, I know Danny touched the lives of many people in this room and beyond.
Yes.
And this piece certainly pays a wonderful tribute to everything that he has contributed to the genre, and also what he did in popularizing and introducing this music to America.
Absolutely.
Or I should say the United States of America.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's total
Wonderful.
Filipino
I can't wait.
too. Yeah.
All right.
Since this will be the last song
song, I would like to sort of, if you don't mind, sort of introduce everybody.
Sure.
So we'll get into places for the birth of cool, but I did want to say that this is a sneak peek at a piece that both the Autonomous Region and Cultura Capua, the house ensembles of the International Hotel Manilatown Center, has been working on since the winter, that is going to be premiering, next month. So you're not seeing quite the whole show. There is something to see, so we hope that you will come back when Club Mandalay returns after this show to show the full performance. So this has been a sneak peek, and come back, please. And let me see, what else can I say? Any last words from you, sir, before we end with the song?
No, I
Okay.
think, that's pretty much it. I want to thank everyone for allowing me to dissect your piece. I mean, I felt guilty, Marcella. My apologies, for not maybe making it clear that I wanted to focus on some things, even though it might have been taking some things out of sequence. And Nito, again, we took your intro and made a whole thing around it. and I wanted to do that because often it's the little things in a big piece like this that really make the difference. As I pointed out, the transitions were critical because you were bridging some pretty heavy territory here and wide. It encompassed a lot of things. It was deeply personal and universal at the same time. And so that's a lot.
Thank you, and we would like to thank Carlos Zialcita for giving this opportunity to speak with us, and this wonderful ensemble that we have put together for Ulalam Sugilanon is Raymond Bambao on piano, Kuya Ben Luis on bass, we have Harold Ohashi on drums, Daniel Giray on a multitude of Mindanao and Kalinga instruments. And we have Nito Medina on guitar. We have Frank Holder on a variety of instruments, including congas. And we have Patrick Tamayo right over there, also on traditional instruments. And we have Jabril Alvarez, who's also on traditional instruments. And last but absolutely not least is our bard, the lovely Marcella Pabros Clark. So we are going to end now with, first of all, we're going to answer with a bit of a, why don't you, we'll put you here for a Kubing interlude that goes into verse, that goes into the very last song of the piece, The Birth of Cool.
They say everything changes once a baby is newborn. Long silence, now a stranger. Lifelong love, forever sworn. A girl half Ilocano means Julia has a son. The family has begun. Madeline would be her name. The apple of Lolo's eye, spoiled by Lola Julia. Tell her no? Oh, don't even try. But that's another story. For today, this song so true, Baby Girls, the Birth of Cool.